The Screen Actors Guild is joining the Writers Guild of America in going on strike. Let's hear from President of SAG-AFTRA, Fran Drescher. You all know her, famous sitcom actress here.
One of my people, literally. Jew from Queens.
Indeed. Here she is talking about why they are going on strike.
I cannot believe it, quite frankly. How far apart we are on so many things. How they plead poverty, that they're losing money left and right when giving hundreds of millions of dollars to their CEOs. It is disgusting.
Not to mention ketchup on a hot dog at the craft service table. We've been saying for years we need mustard and sauerkraut and relish. They're giving us ketchup. What do we look like, a bunch of goys?
And what's with the knishes? Yeah, right. You don't put cheese in a knish.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. She's with it. She knows what's up.
Shame on them. They stand on the wrong side of history at this very moment. We stand in solidarity, in unprecedented unity. Our union and our sister unions and the unions around the world are standing by us, as well as other labor unions. Because at some point, the jig is up. You cannot keep being dwindled and marginalized and disrespected and dishonored. The entire business model has been changed by streaming, digital, AI. This is a moment of history that is a moment of truth. If we don't stand tall right now, we are all going to be in trouble. We are all going to be in jeopardy of being replaced by machines and big business, who cares more about Wall Street than you and your family. Most of Americans don't have more than $500 in an emergency.
All right. So, it's great that clip is circulating because she gets a lot in there in a minute and 40 seconds. Like, she touches on a lot of problems there, a lot of bigger problems that are more systemic across the economy as a whole, and then a lot of problems that are more specific to her industry, like AI, streaming, and things like that. So go ahead. You got some stuff on this, Russell.
Okay, so this is kind of interesting. Just getting into the strike more generally before we get into the response from the producers. All right, so this is the Times coverage here. The Hollywood Actors Union approved a strike on Thursday for the first time in 43 years, bringing the $134 billion American movie and television business to a halt over anger about pay and fears of a tech-dominated future. The leaders of SAG-AFTRA, the union representing 160,000 television and movie actors, announced the strike after negotiations with studios over a new contract collapsed. So skipping ahead a little, this is interesting. Actors and screenwriters have not been on strike at the same time since 1960, when Marilyn Monroe was still starring in films, and with AI, she may be again soon. Yep. And Ronald Reagan was the head of the Actors Union. That fucking old lefty. Dual strikes.
Fucking commie.
Commie. Dual strike. Well, you know what he said. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me.
That's right.
Dual strikes pit more than 170,000.
You see what happens, Larry, when you fuck a stranger in the ass?
That's a Ronald Reagan quote. That's where they got that from the movie. Yeah,
that's what he said during that strike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
His rallying cry on the picket line. You see what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass?
I want you to ask yourself this question, America. Do you see what happens when you fuck a stranger in the... Oh, I'm sorry. I meant, are you better off today than you were before? You're sorry. I got that confused.
Dual strikes pit more than 170,000 workers against old line studios like Disney, Universal, Sony, and Paramount, as well as tech juggernauts like Netflix, Amazon, and Apple. All right. So The producers did have a response to this, and they laid out 14 points that they agreed to concede to the union, arguing that actually there was no reason for this. That's the story they're telling. All right, so some of what they offered is the highest percentage increase in minimums in 35 years, 76% increase in high budget video on demand, foreign residuals, substantial increases in pension and health contribution caps. They don't say exactly what those are. This is kind of interesting. It looks like, unlike with the writers, they conceded the AI point. I have a theory on why it's not as big a deal as it would be with the writers. Groundbreaking AI proposal which protects performers' digital likenesses, including a requirement for performers' consent for the creation and use of digital replicas or for digital alterations of a performance. So it sounds like that's exactly what they were asking for. My theory on why they gave ground on this is because they understand the industry is changing. Tom Cruise is kind of, billed as the last movie star, and he probably is. The way that the world is changing in terms of content creation and distribution, you're probably never going to have a Marilyn Monroe or a John Wayne again. But they're not going to be bound by those contracts on their back catalog. They'll be able to put Marilyn Monroe in a movie if they want. So fuck these guys, right? That's why I think they gave right in on that. 58% increase in salaries for major role guest star performers' wages on high budget video on demand, streaming video on demand programs. Limitation of self-tape requests. I mean, that's kind of getting into the weeds there. 11% pay increase in year one for background actors, stand-ins, and photo doubles. An additional 17% increase for background actors required to do extensive self-styling, and an additional 62% increase for stand-ins required to deliver lines during a run-through, and photo doubles required to memorize and deliver lines. So, they laid out a lot of what they're offering. For something, when you're talking about only doing this pay increase for high-budget movies that stream overseas, that's not going to help the average actor, right? The average actor is not in those kinds of projects. So, to the credit of the people who are running these negotiations, who are probably in the higher end of the industry, credit to them for not just giving in and holding out for those more struggling actors. And a point that she's making there, she didn't get into the numbers, but for example, David Zaslav, who runs Warner Brothers Discovery, that cat gets paid about $250 million a year. So it is similar to what you're seeing with the UPS guys, right? Like, it's not that the money's not there in the system. It's that the money is not being distributed to the actors, to the writers, and so on. Now, that having been said, unlike UPS, where, if anything, the trend of the world is towards having everything shipped and not actually going to a store to buy something. So this is a business whose profitability is only growing. This is a business that reflects the future. Whereas Hollywood, I would say part of all of this tumult is that Hollywood itself is a dying business model. Why do you have an industry like Hollywood? Because there's a bar to entry, because the average person can't generate the resources to make a movie, right? So you have an industry of people who have the capital to provide the cameras, to provide the sets, to provide the necessary labor. The combination of outlets like YouTube that allow schmucks like us to just distribute content, run it up the flagpole and see who salutes, with what AI technology is going to allow you to do with your software in the next few years, Hollywood is not going to make any sense anymore. You might have a remnant industry there, but we're moving into a world where we're continuing this trajectory of little niches with its own personalities, with its own celebrities. This is part of why you can't get a movie star anymore, right? Look, for example, in our little universe, right? In our little universe, Sabby Sabs is an up-and-coming rising star, right? Cenk and Anna are very famous. Nobody knows who the fuck these people are. You go up to the average person, go, hey man, you know who Cenk Uygur is? I don't know who the fuck Cenk Uygur is, and that's about it. That's the biggest name in the space, right? But very famous within this space. That's the world we're moving into. That's where things are going. Where you're just going to have little sub fiefdoms of fame, depending on people's particular interest. And what's really going to kill Hollywood, when a 12-year-old is going to be able to pull up ChatGPT and make a movie, what the fuck you need Hollywood for anymore?
Right. No, absolutely. And, that's on the creative side. On the distribution side, I think the writing on the wall really came in the music world because they already went through this. Like the record labels are like what they went through years ago, what the big Hollywood studios are going through now, right? With the advent of iTunes and Apple Music, Spotify, right? It was really, really hard for bands and artists to make money off of creating albums anymore because you only get paid a piece of what those streaming services take in. Right? If you're not selling an album on iTunes, if you're just getting a piece of whatever the streaming services are, you're getting a very small piece of an overall and ever expanding pie. So it's great for Apple. It's great for the forums, but it's not great for the individual artists. That's why now if you're playing music, you have to go and tour constantly in order to make a living as a band, right? Unless you're Taylor Swift and you can sell, unless you're a major star like that, where you could still make a lot of money off of records. That's not how you'd make money anymore. And a lot of that's happening in Hollywood
too. I was just watching an interview on, I think it's called Film Courage. They do a lot of interesting interviews with people in the industry. And this woman, she still writes novels. And she said, when I wrote my first novel, they gave me $50,000. I sold my last novel, they gave me $4,000. So you're moving into a world where now you're almost better off self-publishing. I mean, it's why a lot of people are doing it now, right?
Yeah.
Like you have more potential to make huge money off your self-publishing than you have going into all the gatekeeping that you're going to have to go through to get your novel published. Like it used to be much more stigmatized to do that. But even that, everything's becoming decentralized. Everything is becoming, content creation and build your brand. And if you want to put your stuff out there, try to build an audience or a market for it. So a lot of this strikes me as, she said at one point, I don't think we played that part. She said at one point towards the end, what are we doing? Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. So it's kind of interesting. On the one hand, she's acknowledging that this is a sinking business. And on the other hand, she's asking them to redistribute the wealth, which...
Well, they have to reorient, right? I mean, look, there's always going to be a demand for movies.
Sure.
Right? But they're going to have to reorient. It's not going to look the same as it does
and it's not going to be as big an industry as it exists. Like
no, because it'll be completely decentralized.
The studios, exactly. Right. It's just not going to be the business it is now. It's not going to be as big. It's not going to have the cultural influence and impact that it has today. And, this will relate to, we're going to get into the theaters as well. People aren't going to the movies like they used to. They'll come out for certain things, which, there's a whole conversation on, did Hollywood go too woke? And that gets into the theater thing too. I think that's part of it. I think that's definitely part of it, that they're not producing content that people want to see. And you can see that in the performance of Maverick and Spider-Man No Way Home, and recently Into the Spider-Verse. Like movies that are not like very cringy woke projects are still doing well if they're well made. So people will come out. But it used to be that you could just kind of throw a movie in a movie theater and there was just some audience for going to the movies. It didn't have to be Top
didn't have
Gun
to drag
Maverick.
Out. Right, exactly.
Right? That audience is kind of gone. Just the casual movie-going audience, it seems like that's gone.
Right, like when I was a teenager, me and my buddy would just be like, we would go once a week on Saturday.
Oh, me too.
The school was that.
Me
We was
too.
like, what's playing? What's playing tomorrow? Let's pick something. That's
right, because
less
you
common.
didn't because you couldn't watch shit at home.
Right, exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
I mean, so of course, unless most of what was on TV was terrible. So if you wanted to see something good, you had to go to the movies.
Right, exactly. You don't like my music. See, not only are we not censoring you, we're actually featuring you here. Spotify pays about $8 for every 1,000 streams. Exactly, right? So if you're this, mega star, you can make decent money putting out an album if you're getting millions and millions of streams.
Right.
If you're a band that, can't sell 100,000 albums, how many streams are you actually generating on these platforms? And you're getting paid almost nothing per play. So if you're not Taylor Swift, you got to hit the road and charge money for tickets and sell merch at the merch tent to make money now, right? It's very, very analog. It's a completely different world.
Please clap.